in development in Asia. Let me just say again. Now, our approach to Asia has been changing, and we have to be mindful of the changes taking place in the region. The Cold War ended. We recognize that. The Soviet Union has gone. But of course, the North Korean threat remains. And the challenges overall are different. As I mentioned, the balance of power challenges that are arising from new states emerging, and the questions that arise from these new states. At the same time, American forces, American capabilities are developing to enable us to have more lighter, faster, more mobile power projection capabilities. It was mentioned, I think, by Congresswoman Bordalio, ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance capabilities. A lot of capabilities that allow us to move much more swiftly forward when need be to overcome that tyranny of distance. It's changing our strategic calculations as well. So that led in the 1990s, when I was first in the Pentagon, the Clinton administration, to consideration of changes in our posture in Asia, to alter the posture to take account to the new environment we see in Asia. And I should say, it's not just in Asia. We looked, over the past decade, we've been looking as a department at Europe. We've been looking at the mainland United States to figure out how to alter our approach of the distribution of our basing, as well as elsewhere in the world. So Asia was a component of a global relook at our posture. And what we came to were a series of sort of principles. One was we wanted to decrease the number of our military personnel forward. In that way, we consolidate and reposition ourselves, our basing, to lessen our footprint in various places. As we lessen the footprint overseas, we also want to balance the presence among other nations. The idea that by dispersing more widely our presence, not just having them all focused on Japan or in Korea, but dispersing more widely gives us much more survivability, gives us many more options and flexibility, which we need in a place or in an environment where the challenges are emerging, where there's a great uncertainty where the future challenges may come. To have them all in one place is simply not strategically viable. So we want to disperse a bit further. We also were looking for more predictable and more sustainable base configuration in Asia-Pacific over the long term. We had to recognize that there were questions being raised by some local communities, and we took them into account in dialogue, as we are here as well, on making sure our base configuration is sustainable and predictable over the long run, and we don't have to continue to be uncertain and question where we're going to be 10, 20, 30 years, because that hurts our planning, hurts our ability to predict and operate in Asia. As well, we want greater flexibility in our training opportunities, our exercising, and we want to be where we're welcomed. And in this, with all these principles, Guam became a centerpiece of the conception of a place for the U.S. to consider more as a strategic location. Now, I'll get to a moment as to why Guam, but let me just give you a little more strategic context for the realignment that surrounds the move here to Guam. I'll focus particularly on U.S.-Japan. We're doing things in Korea, but the U.S.-Japan changes are the ones that have to do with Guam most specifically. Now, the U.S. presence in Japan stemmed from World War II. I think you all know that. And the Cold War. That's where we were at the end of the war. We were in Okinawa in particular, some on mainland Japan. It was always a sensitive issue. In the 1990s, as I said, when I joined the Pentagon, we were looking at reshaping our presence in Okinawa over the long run. We had something called the Special Action Committee on Okinawa, where we first started to look at Futenma. And where do we place this base, which is the huge marine base in the center of Okinawa? And what happened was, originally we were stationed there, no one around, no people in Okinawa were surrounding it, but because we were based there and because Okinawa grew, the communities grew around it. There became questions about the safety. So we had a very close consultation with our Japanese allies and others, and decided to move out of the congested south of the island to the north of the island, and particularly to the northeast, around, frankly, where we were looking to go now. The implementation plan over time faltered for a number of reasons, for some political reasons in Japan. But in 2002, it was picked up by a new administration, by the Bush administration, and it began a new process of alliance transformation and realignment that they called the Defense Policy Review Initiative. You may hear this term, DPRI, D-P-R-I, which is the general term for this alignment and transformation of our presence. It was meant to transform the alliance to be a regional and global partnership. It led to the release of common strategic objectives in 2005, and then roles, missions, capabilities among our forces later in 2005. But in 2006, May 2006 was when we rolled out our roadmap for realignment, which was a carefully negotiated and tightly interlocked set of posture changes to transform our force posture in Japan and the Pacific. And it was considered alongside the base consolidations in South Korea. But this was very tightly developed, where one thing led to another, or some things had to happen in order for other things to happen, including the move north in Okinawa was what was going to lead to the move of Marines to Guam. So it required a number of trade-offs on both sides through this careful negotiation. The heart of the roadmap, I think, as you know, is the movement of 8,000 U.S. Marines and their families from Okinawa to Guam, construction of the Futenma replacement facility in Okinawa to allow the return of Futenma back to Japan, and the reduction or consolidation of U.S. forces in other highly populated areas in southern Okinawa by 2014. And as you may know, Japan assumes all costs for the move to northern Okinawa and assumes much of the cost, at least the estimated cost, of the move to Guam. So, as a way to sustain the active and robust U.S. presence in Okinawa specifically, and the Asia-Pacific region more broadly, the realignment remains a national security priority for this administration, as it has for past administrations. The Obama administration reviewed and affirmed its commitment to this realignment when Secretary of State Clinton and her Japanese counterpart signed the Guam International Agreement this past February, in February 2009. So even though it was from a previous administration, it was reaffirmed by this one after a short review. Now, Guam's role in this. As you see, Guam is therefore an essential component of U.S. strategy in Asia and of U.S. national security more broadly. I can't overstate that. Guam has long claimed it's where America's day begins. As America's territory, it promises also to be where America's strategic engagement of Asia begins. And this, of course, extends beyond the Marine basing. You know, the Army Ballistic Missile Defense Task Force, increase in aviation assets of the Air Force, increase in submarines and other and a carrier-capable facilities here. It's much more than Marines, of course, as you all know. But I want to affirm that this is a broad-based view of Guam as a strategic location. And of course, Guam's strategic advantages as a stable, secure, and robust operating base make it unique. Provides the freedom and flexibility of action necessary to support peacetime engagement, crisis response, theater security cooperation, and capacity building with partners in Asia. The training facilities here as well, and neighboring islands, I should add, will enable increased bilateral and multilateral training and exercise opportunities, not only for ourselves, but with others in the region. This is very, very important. We build partnership capacity in Asia. That phrase, building partnership capacity, is something Secretary Gates talks about all the time. We want to be building capacity of our allies and friends in Asia to do more of the security work there. We can do that in these islands as we partner, something we need to be discussing more with you all here, and what I'll be doing actually the next day or two with other islands. And as I say this, let me just add that we recognize in Washington the extraordinary contribution of Guam citizens to date. We always hear about the highest per capita percentage of those in uniform in the United States come from Guam. It's extraordinary. And that I just learned your lieutenant governor is now deployed to Afghanistan. I can't put into words just how important, how special that is. So don't think that we ignore what you already are doing. And we just are tremendously grateful for the contributions that Guam makes. Now, the implementation of the Guam realignment, we think has advantages to all stakeholders. Obviously, the Department of Defense, to our federal resource agencies, but also the government and citizens of Guam. We think that Guam can be, and should be, a shining example of the best of America as the front porch, as we say to the United States. And I want to highlight in particular, by the way, and